or something like that, these people don't want you to do that.
Exactly.
And I had the conversation that, you know, it's not the baby's fault trying to put my views in it and my morality, but I think it's a very tough battle.
It is a tough
the
battle.
school system today and what we're faced with as parents and what they're really just trying to jam down the throats of our children. I mean, I think it's despicable. I really do. I think it's awful.
And the sad part is that they're using those arguments where in fact those are the lesser numbers of abortions have to do with rape. And the great majority of them are just optional and controversial to that extent, you know. But they're using that argument to make it possible for the conscience of this other person, this young person, to see that yes, this abortion can be acceptable in some situations. And now once you find it acceptable in some situations, then it becomes easier to accept in all situations, no? So.
Actually, I don't have the link, but a friend of mine related a story to me about that particular situation. A young girl was raped and had to make the decision. And she ended up deciding to have the child. And the person that was going on to tell the story was the child that had grown up. But she was the result of a rape. And she,
right.
you know, and she obviously she's happy to be alive. And and I'll try to find that actual link that has the conversation, the story.
Right.
It's a short video. I'll try to find it and send it to the group. And I just want to share one other thing. This is one other thing on tough moral teachings on the how to answer tough moral questions.
Okay.
Apologetic.
Good.
All about this particular one. It says conscience can never conflict with. Let me back one sentence here.
Yeah.
It says, remember, Vatican II in Gaudium et Spes says conscience is God's voice speaking within us, not just our own opinion. Conscience can never conflict with church teaching, since church teaching is also God's voice.
Exactly.
If our conscience conflicts with church teaching, we know it cannot be our conscience speaking. As our Holy Father, Pope John Paul II, has said many times, true freedom isn't the ability to do whatever you want, but the ability to do what you ought.
Right.
True freedom of conscience is found in obeying the teachings of the Church. And this has just a fantastic set of just tough
Yes.
walking you through these answers to the Church's response to these really, however obscure they may be, but they love to have brought those up as like the justification for doing what a group like the Church would call it evil and claiming, well, see, it's good. This is really good, but you can never do an evil act to
remedy any evil. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question of the group related to conscience? We talk about some people that have no conscience. I mean, is it possible that someone is so truly evil they don't have a conscience telling them what is good? There's just always something telling them you're going to do something bad, and they can't see anything good because of their circumstance.
Well, there's been criminals and assassins that have been studied, and it's been demonstrated that they have malfunctioning brains, in chemical imbalances. Certain parts of the brain are not connected, and there's no ability. There's no ability there to have any empathy, which is that people that lack empathy have an easier time committing evil acts. And that is a very in itself is a physical deficiency, and when that can be demonstrated, and the lawyers will use this, if not to exonerate the person, to at least which the Church doesn't believe it, but many states have it, the death penalty. So.
And I think also, Deacon, you were talking about something that's really your when you're talking about God would be the judge. I think it's like really your culpability, right? I mean, you can be, you're less, the same act you're not necessarily equal.
Exactly.
Because you, in a case like this,
the judgment is individual.
Yeah.
Judgment is individual for all of us. All of us have a conscience. All of us have a history. All of us grew up in a certain environment with patterns of behavior learned, deep ingrained, etc. No, and when we stand in front of God, that's what's going to be judged. This person, Ivan, not Ty. Ty comes behind, or maybe two or three behind. Okay, and when Ty comes forward, it's just Ty based on his reality. What opportunities he had, what did he lack, how did he make this decision, that decision, and what were the influences, the pressures, etc. And that's basically what I was trying to say. And I think there's a friar here, and I left my glasses, so I'm just sort of like cheating here by. So if you see me doing like that, you know, that's how I get to. That basically tries to explain this, because what you just read, Ty, is the standard answer, and that has to be the teaching of the church, because when the bishops and the Pope speaks, we understand and we believe that they speak with the influence of the Holy Spirit, and that is God speaking. Yes.
I disagree. Now, I had 16 years of Catholic training.
Yes.
And things that were told to me that would be the teachings of the church, some of them are ridiculous. I mean, I remember in grammar school, at that time, you had to fast and abstain from midnight before going to communion.
Mm-hmm.
And the nuns would teach us that you couldn't have a drop of water after midnight, or you'd burn in hell for all eternity. And they taught us that they taught us that was from the mouth of God, that the God spoke to the Pope, and the Pope spoke to the bishops, and the bishops spoke to the monsignors, and the monsignors spoke to the priests, and the priests spoke to the nuns. And there was this story of this little boy who was 8 or 9, and he had one drop of water after midnight. And he went to communion, and when he left the church, a truck ran over him and he died, and he's burning in hell for all eternity. Now that the church says you can drink water after midnight, I'm wondering, is that little boy still burning in hell? I mean,
Yeah.
so I do not agree that
burning in
everything that comes out, the teachings of the church,
Uh-huh.
are out of the mouth of God. I think
Well,
some of the teachings of the
I
church
would,
get upset at.
if you have the time, and I don't know if you do, that would be a very good assignment, because you remember the period of time when this nun said this, and the writings of the church. The good thing about the church is that all of that, even the bad things, are in writing somewhere. And the Inquisition, everything that happened in the Inquisition, you can find in writing. And all the evils within the church is has a saint and is a sinner too, no? It has an aspect of the church that is, we are all sinners and we are in the church, but then the church has this sanctity too, because it comes from Christ, okay, and the Holy Spirit dwells within it. So, but I would, if I was you, go back to that period of time and find the catechism of the Catholic Church that was effective at that time, and and I bet you would not find that. What happens oftentimes is that religious, or it could be anyone that has a spiritual desire for sacrifice, like nuns in those days probably were just devoted. to this. And they would probably take this teaching and pass it on to kids in that way. And it was not uncommon. I was taught in second grade in my Catholic grade school, and this I was taught. And this is something that, if you were left-handed, you were forced by the nuns to write with your right hand.
Yes.
You were forced by the nuns to write with your right hand. Okay? And now, this is no comparison to what you just said. This is just a mere fact that by nature your brains are aligned in a way. Okay, so yes, the church, the understanding of the church has developed as the time has passed. More alignment. There were many things, like in all of us, that were not really, like you said, could not have come from the Holy Spirit, and they were passed on as supposedly.
It's not unusual that there's this exaggeration. I mean, even in the Bible, you find
Exactly.
the prophets
Exactly.
exaggerating to teach
How they perceive God. They perceive God as this God that was a God of punishment. And
It also just doesn't quite add up. That doesn't jive with the understanding of mortal sin in the grave.
exactly, grave matter. It doesn't reconcile with that. Exactly.
It absolutely is,
Yeah.
and it never has been.
Yeah.
So it's irreconcilable.
Yes. So it's illogical. It's completely
So
illogical.
you could go back, and so I agree with the Deacon. You'll never find it written.
You'll never find
It's
anything. Yeah.
some person saying, well, in authority, your child, or at the time of child, someone in authority whose intention is probably good. They're
Yeah.
trying to develop
A sense
but
of
their means
sacrifice.
developing your
Yeah.
practice of virtue was, for example,
Yeah.
someone can very
Well, has that changed?
But
Has that changed completely? Or
You're not-
is
you
some
never-
of the stuff will be told,
It's
one
not
should not, from what you read, it sounded like you'd have to agree with, your conscience would have to agree with everything the church is telling you. Does that mean that some things the church is telling you now, you just have to go by? Or
But is it saying
can you
the church or
decide in
God?
your own conscience?
This is so the teachings of the church, right? Like the Deacon said, are in the catechism. They're in
The revised catechism.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so,
Yes.
so the church is always trying to be more, clear in how I think she articulates.
Right. And that's what I was trying to get at that point that you're making. But you cannot just, well, you can do whatever you want because you have free will, and every one of us have free will. What we're trying to establish is when your moral conscience will decide to go against the teaching of the church, it cannot be just because you think it is not right or because it doesn't make sense. It has to be more educated than that. You have to go to the core of the matter and develop your conscience in an informed way. And then what the friar here articulates is that it says for Catholics to disagree with the church teachings, he or she would need to have very clear reasons and convictions. This could only follow a genuine search for meaning through docility to church teaching, reading, prayer, taking counsel, developing the virtue of prudence, and so on. Any conflict would then be within the person's conscience rather than between conscience and some alien magisterial authority. Okay, it's within the person's conscience after taking all of those steps, including go to your spiritual director, hatch it out more than once, question your motives, because we have motives for doing things. What's really behind all this? Am I accommodating myself? Am I accommodating someone in this? If I have a gay son and he wants to marry, and now he's my son, I love my son, and he's gay, he's just basically gay. Why does the church put these obstacles on people to condemn them? Am I not accommodating to my situation? If we was the neighbors and my son wasn't gay, would I think the same way? Probably not. So, you know, there's a lot of motives for us to think and act in certain ways. That's what I'm trying to get at. You need to develop a conscience that is that it has questioned your motives in everything we do. And it is difficult to do that. It takes time, and oftentimes we don't have the time because we're always running around. Our daily schedule does not allow for that kind of time. So when we come to these groups, when we take time to come to a group prayer, when we're doing the rosary and people say, we're just in a litany, we're just repeating things, okay, repeat it. And at the time, think about this decision that you're trying to make. Put it in front of God as you continue to say this litany of repetition, and that will enlighten you. Possibly, it will definitely help you. Ty?
I was just going to make the point, because this is the thing I think we all wrestle with sometimes. We're always put in these situations.
This is today's issues, the biggest issue in the church.
Yeah, we wrestle with, I think deep down, it's in our hearts, we want to do good. And even that first reading, which we picked up, was
yes, it's on the money.
Our will versus our bodies, what we do.
Right.
And and just but ultimately, I think also throughout the Gospels, you see when they brought the adulterous woman before Jesus, and
exactly.
I don't condemn you, but go and sin no more.
Exactly. The idea is conversion. Yes.
But he desires mercy. So I think
mercy. Yes.
All the scenarios that you're painting and the situations, and it's like. Yeah, we have to remember, I think always, is to just not judge, and we heard it in the readings this week even, don't judge, and try to be merciful, because as we judge, so God will judge us.
Exactly.
And I think if we can be loving, but the thing that is so hard is when do you do not want to, and this is what I struggle with, is when do you go from sort of, you don't want to condone or be a conduit for continued bad behavior.
So the truth stands on its own, and it can be articulated and said in a way that is not